So on behalf of ISKCON Dwarka, we would like to welcome Her Grace Rukmini Devi Mataji. So it's our great fortune that Mataji is here among us today. So she was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1968 in Montreal. After coming to Krishna consciousness in San Francisco, she has served Boston, Newark and Los Angeles as Pujari. In 1972, she was sent by Srila Prabhupada along with a group of other devotees to Mayapur to learn the art of putul, clay doll making, for the purpose of creating theistic exhibition. And apart from that, she is board member of Bhakti Center in New York City and the Bhakti Vedanta College at Radhadesh in Belgium. She is currently teaching and leading workshops and retreat in Newark and the Washington DC area. And she is the wife of His Grace Anuttama Prabhu, who is ISKCON Global Minister of Communication. And she is mother of Gauravani Prabhu, the Kirtanier, so who is so famous. Yes, and she lives in Washington DC area. So today we are so fortunate Mataji is here among us. We have heard so much about Mataji. Today we are here to hear from her. So let's welcome Mataji from the core of our heart by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Her Grace Rukmini Devi Mataji ki, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki.
Thank you for inviting me to this beautiful up-and-coming temple. So exciting. Hare Krishna. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Rukmini Dwarkadish, Rukmini Dwarkadish, Rukmini Dwarkadish, Rukmini Dwarkadish, Rukmini Dwarkadish, Rukmini. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra, Jaya Jagannath, Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita. Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Ananta Lila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Astatara Satasrishima Shila Abhay Charnaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai From Sakor Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Mathura Dhamma Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dhamma Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai Dwarka Dham Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Somewhere there might be a marker in this book. Okay. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 7, text number 40. 140, thank you. Thare nirvishesha kahi chit Shakti Namani Thare Nivishesha Kahi Chit Shakti Namani Thare Nivishesha Kahi Chit Shakti Namani Arda Swarup Namani Le Purnata Hai Hani Arda Swarup Namani Le Purnata Hai Hani Arda Swarupna Manile Purnata Hai Hani. Please chant. Matajis, Vaishnavis. Anyone else? Okay. Tare. Unto him, nirvishesha, impersonal. Kahi, we say, chit shakti, spiritual energy. Na, do not. Mani, accept. Ardha, half. Swarupa, form. Na, not. Manile, accepting. Purnata, fullness. Haya, becomes. Hani, defective. Translation. When we speak of the Supreme as impersonal, we deny his spiritual potencies. Logically, if you accept half the truth, you cannot understand the whole. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. In the Upanishads it is said, Om Purnam Adahat Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vishishyate. This verse, which is mentioned in the Ishopanishad, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, and many other Upanishads, indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in 6 opulences. His position is unique, for he possesses all riches, strength, influence, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Brahman means the greatest, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is greater than the greatest. Just as the sun globe is greater than the sunshine, which is all-pervading in the universe. Although the sunshine that spreads all over the universes appears very great to the less knowledgeable, greater than the sunshine is the sun itself, and greater than the sun is the sun god. Similarly, impersonal Brahman is not the greatest, and although it appears to be so, impersonal Brahman is only the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the transcendental form of the Lord is greater than both the impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. Therefore, whenever the word Brahman is used in the Vedic literature, it is understood to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is addressed as Para Brahman. Mayavadis and others sometimes misunderstand Brahman because every living entity is also Brahman. Therefore, Krishna is referred to as Para Brahman, the Supreme Brahman. In the Vedic literature, whenever the words Brahman and Para Brahman are used, they are to be understood to refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. This is their real meaning. Since the entire Vedic literature deals with the subject of Brahman, Krishna is therefore the ultimate goal of Vedic understanding. The impersonal Brahmajyoti rests on the personal form of the Lord. Excuse me. Therefore, Although the impersonal effulgence, the Brahmajyoti, is the first realization, one must enter into it, as mentioned in the Ishopanishad, to find the Supreme Person, and then one's knowledge is perfect. The Bhagavad Gita 7:19 also confirms this. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. One's search for the absolute truth by dint of speculative knowledge is complete when one comes to the point of understanding Krishna and surrenders unto him. That is the real point of perfectional knowledge. Partial realization of the absolute truth as impersonal Brahman denies the complete opulences of the Lord. This is a hazardous understanding of the absolute truth. And thus one accepts all the features of the absolute truth, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One's knowledge is imperfect. Shripad Ramanujacharya in his Vedartha Sangraha says, Jnanena dharmena swarupam api nirupitam natu jnanam matram brahmeti katam idam avagamyate. He thus indicates that the real identity of the Absolute Truth must be understood in terms of both his knowledge and his characteristics. Simply to understand the Absolute Truth, to be full of knowledge, is not sufficient. In the Vedic literature, Mundaka Upanishad 119, we find the statement, Yak Sarvagya Sarvavit, which means that the Absolute Truth knows everything perfectly. But we also learn from the Vedic description, Parasya Shakti Vividaiva Shruyate, that not only does he know everything, but he also acts accordingly by utilizing his different energies. Thus, to understand that Brahman, the Supreme, is conscious is not sufficient. One must know how he consciously acts through his different energies. Mayavadi philosophy simply informs us of the consciousness of the Absolute Truth, but does not give us information of how he acts with his consciousness. That is the defect of that philosophy. Can this go back up a little bit, maybe halfway? Thank you. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksun Militamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Hina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanshakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Swasyastu Visvasya Kalo Prasidatam Danyantu Bhutani Shivam Mitodiha Manascha Bhadram Vajata Dadhoksaje Aveshatam No Matirapya Hoituki. Thank you all so much for coming to this Chaitanya Charitamrita class. Srila Prabhupada's great gift of the, were originally 17 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So here in this verse and the purport, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. Sorry, this garland is so beautiful, but it's a little cold, so please forgive me for taking it off. I appreciate the kindness. Just put this around me. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Srila Prabhupada are pointing out in this verse and purport the defect of what it says in the purport of the defect of the hazardous Mayavadi philosophy. When we were driving over here in the car this morning, Kanai Priya Prabhu was telling me some stories of Prabhupada when he was speaking in New York in the 1966 in the studio of Dr. Mishra, and Prabhupada was sitting at the back of the room. Dr. Mishra did not want Prabhupada to speak. At one point he said, "Now Swamiji will sing us a song," in a very demeaning way, like he was allowing Prabhupada to do a little kirtan but not speak. So this one man was sitting next to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada whispered to him while Dr. Mishra was speaking, "This is all nonsense." So here that's being further explained. So why is it all nonsense? Why is it hazardous? What is the defect? The defect is that philosophy only explains half the truth. It denies, it talks about the position of the Supreme, but it doesn't talk about his potencies or how he acts in that position. It doesn't talk about his potencies, his energies, and how he's acting. So Srila Prabhupada says that whenever, in this purport, whenever Brahman is mentioned, it actually indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is very confidential knowledge. This is, all over India, all over the world, people are really, all the religions actually have become contaminated by this impersonal thinking. And they tend to think that this kind of devotional thinking is more for, not very sophisticated, not very intellectual people. Women and children, right? And, but yeah, so this is Prabhupada's revealing the mystery, like Krishna says in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Only by bhakti can we be allowed to enter into the mystery of his understanding. So here Srila Prabhupada's opening that mystery to us. So yeah, the ultimate source is greater than the energy. Prabhupada gives the example in this purport, just like the sun god is generating the rays of his body as sunshine, but our limited vision, we can only see the sunshine or the sun planet, but we can't see the source of that energy. So we need to understand that the energetic is acting along with his energy, that he's never divorced from his energy. And his energy, or Shakti, is always acting. The Shakti is always acting under the direction of the Shaktiman, or the source of the energy. Maya Dyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharami Hetunanena Kaunteya Jagat Viparivartate. Krishna says in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, "This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again." So the point here is that the impersonal philosophy denies the person, right? Denies the person behind all things. And in the last sentence of Srila Prabhupada's purport, he says that the defect of the impersonal philosophy is that it somewhat explains the consciousness of the Absolute Truth, but does not explain how he acts in that consciousness. It denies the details of the opulences of the Lord, and and it's just not enough to know that he's conscious. In order to, right, if you think about it, in order to love someone, you need to love a person, right? You can't just love the sky. You might like the sky, right? Of course, the sky in Delhi, you can't see it, right? But you might like the sky, but you can't really love the sky. In order to love, we have to love a person, because the person is what's real. A person is what's real and what's relatable. And when we want to love someone, we need to know the details about that person. So in that way, Bhagavan is defined as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in 6 opulences. Aisvaryasya samagrasya viryasya yasasasya Jnana vairagya yaschaiva sangam badha itangana. This is from the Vishnu Purana. So the details of the greatness of that person are that he possesses, right, all riches, all strength, all influence, beauty, knowledge. And in spite of having all those things, he's not attached to any of it. He's renounced, right? He can just walk away from it. Yeah. There's actually, since we're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita this morning, there's a beautiful story of Lord Chaitanya when he was riding on a boat with another scholar. And this scholar was, Lord Chaitanya had written a commentary to a Sanskrit grammar. And this other scholar, young scholar, had also written a commentary to that grammar. And when he heard that the Nimai Pandit, the brilliant Nimai Pandit, had written a commentary like his, he just became so disturbed because he thought, well, no one will read my commentary because Nimai Pandit is so brilliant and so great. And whatever he's written will be so much greater than anything I've written. And so he was very disturbed. And Lord Chaitanya, who was not Lord Chaitanya yet, he was Nimai Pandit, he saw the distress in the face of this other scholar, and he said, oh, you're disturbed that I've also written a commentary. So Nimai Pandit, he just took his commentary and threw it in the river. So this is the renunciation of the Lord, right? And I've heard that the grammar written by that other scholar is still used today. That it's so brilliant that it's still used today. But Lord Chaitanya was so renounced. Oh, you're feeling some pain in your heart that my commentary might be better than yours. Just throw it in the river. So, yeah. So this is so beautiful, isn't it? It really touches the heart when you hear about the sweetness and the love of such a person. So on this sublime path of bhakti, Srila Prabhupada's I always find it so charming. Srila Prabhupada says, we are given God's address, Vrindavan, right? We know where he lives. He lives in Vrindavan. We know his father's name, Nanda Maharaj, right? So such charming sweetness, made so accessible, like such a great mystery, but made so accessible for us by such great acharyas as Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas in our great disciplic succession. So what I really want to talk about today is this idea of personalism, but not just personalism, but a lived personalism. So I'd like to call this class a lived personalism. And what do I mean by that? What am I talking about? Everybody here understands English? Pretty much? Okay, okay. At Punjabi Bagh, they were speaking in Hindi. But thank you for letting me speak in English. Prabhupada also was not very, he didn't think his Hindi speaking was very good. Sometimes he would ask the audience if he should speak in Bengali or English or Hindi, and he didn't feel like he was very proficient in Hindi. So my point is here that we're following a highly personal philosophy, and yet often in our temples we behave or we interact in impersonal ways. Have you ever experienced that? Yeah. Somebody maybe jumps over you to give a garland to their guru or something like that, you know? So what I really want to talk about here is that what's real is the person. Just yesterday we had such a beautiful Gita Jayanti celebration. Did you have that here also? Gita Jayanti? Yeah. Jai Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish, Jagannath Subhadra Baladev, Shri Karnitaya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So many devotees were gathered just to honor the sacred words of the Supreme Person, Lord Shri Krishna. And in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the great summary, pinnacle chapters is the yoga of the Supreme Person, right? So Krishna consciousness is the yoga of the Supreme Person. And we're being instructed here to worship that Supreme Person along with his energies. Otherwise, our worship, our knowledge is incomplete. And I think we're probably all familiar with Bhagavad Gita 4:34, where Krishna says we must try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master the self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. So what about the next verse? Do we know the next verse as well as we know that verse? Verse 435. So the question is, what is that truth, right? He'll give you the truth because he's seen the truth. But what is the truth? So in verse 435, Krishna says, when you have learned the truth, you will know that all living beings are but a part of me, are in me, and are mine. So what does that say to you? I mean, how should we treat other living beings? Anybody have a thought on that? Anybody have a thought? If all living beings are part of Krishna, are in him, and he says they're mine, like, you know, like a 2-year-old will say about his toys, they're mine, mine. So Krishna in a very possessive way is saying, they're mine. So what does that bring up for you? What does that mean to you? Anybody have a thought? Respectful? Okay, what about respectful? That's nice. What else? Be respectful of other living beings. Beautiful. They're dear to Krishna, so they should be dear to us also, right? Some religions, they talk about religious tolerance. That doesn't sound very satisfying, does it? Tolerance. I'm just going to tolerate you. I'm not going to destroy you or kill you. I'll just tolerate you. What else? So we had 2 answers. Be respectful. Understand that they're dear to Krishna, so they should be dear to us. What else? Anybody else have any thoughts? What about any Vaishnavis, silent Vaishnavis back there in the back? I still see you. Krishna takes care of us, so therefore... Sorry, I can't hear. We belong to Krishna, so he takes care of us. So what does that say about how we should be to our other people? Anybody else have another thought before I move on? Be sensitive, be caring, right? Once Srila Prabhupada said that we should understand that anyone who walks into one of our temples is Krishna's very personal, special guest. Do we treat them like that? No. It's very, very important. To me, the most painful thing to hear in one of our temples is when someone says, oh yeah, I came to this temple 6 years ago, but I never came back because nobody talked to me. You know? How painful. You know? That's not the mood of Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas. Once, I'll tell you a funny story. My husband was the temple president of Denver, Colorado at one time. And we were trying to open a restaurant in the temple. And there was a man coming from the city, and it was up to him to give us permission or not. It was his decision to thumbs up or thumbs down. And so my husband, being a very welcoming person, friendly person, he said, oh, have you ever been to our temple before? And the man said, yeah, I was here a few years ago, and somebody told me I was a demon. And that is a true story. Yeah, so just as we have to understand Krishna by how he acts, we have to also demonstrate our love for him by acting with this kind of understanding. That all living beings are beloved to him, they are part of him, they are in him, and they belong to him. One of the cornerstones of Srila Prabhupada's preaching and the preaching of our acharyas is given in the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Kirata hunandra pulinda pulkasa abhira shumba yavana kasadaya janesu papa yadupasrayasraya sudanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. This is such an amazing verse that lists all these people from all these countries all over the world. Kirata, the Huns, that's Hungary. Andhra mentions the people from Andhra Pradesh. Andhra, wow. Pulinda, that's the Greeks. Polkasa, I don't know who that is, Abira, Sumba, Yavana, the Turks, right? The members of the Kasha races, I think that's the Chinese. And even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord due to His being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto Him. Isn't that so powerful and so beautiful? Yeah, in one of our temples in the US, there's an African lady. She's a devotee. She's an initiated devotee. She is from Rwanda. So she lived through the civil war in Rwanda. And just imagine, we can hardly imagine what she's been through, anyone who's lived through war, right? So she's an initiated devotee, black African lady, lives in the temple. Somebody came up to her in the temple and said to her, "This is not your religion. What are you doing here?" You know? Just imagine how discouraged and excluded that African Vaishnavi felt hearing that. So then let's contrast that consciousness to the inclusive consciousness of Srila Prabhupada. I'll tell you a story of Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada, when they were building the Mumbai temple, Surabhi Maharaj was the architect, and Prabhupada was there in Mumbai, and he was in his room, and Surabhi Maharaj came in there and said, "Prabhupada, there's one of the stone workers, one of the stonemasons here building the temple, all day long while he's..." Prabhupada was very disturbed by that sound of that. But he was also encouraged that the progress was going on. But so Surabhi Maharaj came and told Prabhupada, this one stone worker, all day long while he's working, he's saying, Allah, 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 like that. All day long he's chanting the name of Allah. And Prabhupada said, "Oh, I want to see him." He was so moved by that, you know. He wasn't saying, "Oh, well, let's go tell him he should chant Krishna, Krishna." No, he was very moved by that. So Surabhi Maharaj said, "Oh, Prabhupada, I'll bring him here." And Prabhupada said, No, I don't want to disturb his work." So Prabhupada got up from his asana and he went and, was secretly looking at this man from around the corner without disturbing his work. He wanted to see his beautiful devotion. This is the broad-mindedness of Srila Prabhupada, right? So, let's see. I think I have this quote from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He says, this is a nice quote about community building from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who was very, very broad in his outreach. He says, "We do not just want to become members of a powerful institution, but we want to experience the theology in such a way that our lives preach our message. We want people to feel amazed by our culture of devotion. If the participants are wholesome, the families are strong, and their physical and psychological needs are met, this devotional..." "This devotional culture will certainly amaze people. Most important, they should see how the spiritual care offered to those in the immediate environment extends outwards." Right? "We must first influence our own communities in order to influence the society. If we cannot first help ourselves, how will we execute the commission of these great acharyas who want us to assist them in global transformation?" Do you like that quote? It's nice, right? It's so visionary, right? I think that's what's being asked of us, to be visionary, not just do the arti or even mechanically distribute books, right? Because think about it, when we're distributing books, someone's looking at us and saying, "Well, if I buy this book, I'll become like him. I'll become like her. Do I want to become like that person? Or is that person an example of, a living example of what's in these books?" So Bhagavad Gita, the 9th chapter, the 2nd verse, so powerfully chanted yesterday at the Gita Jayanti, that we're meant to be pratyaksha vagamam dharmam. We're meant to be personally experiencing this. We're meant to be personally tasting this. Pratyaksha means direct experience. We're not meant to just be reading about it, right? And then it flies out of our brains, and then we close the book and someone says, "What do you read?" And we say, I can't remember. I think it was something about Krishna. But, we're actually meant to be experiencing it, pratyaksha, And only when we have it in stock, right? Like if someone asks you, like you go to the shop and you say, "I want to buy 1 kilo of bananas," and the man says, "I don't have any bananas," then you can't get bananas, right? From him. So if we have no taste for this, we can't give it to anyone else, right? So we have to taste it ourselves, experience it ourselves, and then pay it forward with compassion to whoever we meet. This is Lord Chaitanya's order, right? Jari dako tare kaha Krishna upadesh. So we're meant to be living it, and we're meant to be sharing it. And if we don't live it, if we don't taste it, how can we share it? We're supposed to walk this world as living examples of what happens to a person who reads these books, right? We're supposed to be examples of a living personalism. And as I said before, what's real is what's personal. What's real is the person. When you read, please everyone, read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, because you'll get a sense of Srila Prabhupada's great sacrifice and his living personalism, and the character of Srila Prabhupada, what he did here in Delhi, in Jhansi, in Allahabad, and then in New York. Again, we were talking in the car that Prabhupada was in New York. He said that sometimes he was having night hunger, night pains. It means he was starving. At night he was starving because he was so poor he had nothing to eat. So, we have to really meditate on this, keep it in our hearts. What was the extent, and was there any limit to Srila Prabhupada's selfless compassion for all of us? I've always felt that Srila Prabhupada could feel our pain, could feel our pain and suffering, these strangers across so many continents, suffering in ignorance of who we are and what's the purpose of life in this crazy, war-torn world. What's going on here? I remember as a child, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I felt like an alien dropped from another planet. It's like, to be in this world with no knowledge of who we are and what our purpose is. I just always felt like Srila Prabhupada across the oceans, across the 7 oceans and 7 seas, he could feel our pain. So what about us? Are we just supposed to read it and hear about it? Or are we supposed to be gaining this direct experience? A Taste for the Living Holy Name, a beautiful book by Sachidanand Swami, The Living Holy Name. We're supposed to be getting a taste and be impelled by that love and try to share it with all humility. So I like to call Srila Prabhupada's living personalism a radical personalism. And there's actually been a school of personalist philosophers. I don't know if you've ever heard the name Martin Buber, if any of you are scholars. He talked about living with an I-thou philosophy. In other words, not just thinking about me and thinking about other people as sort of the objects of what I'm trying to achieve, but seeing other people as not just you, but thou, in a very sacred way. That was his worldview. To try to see ourselves as sacred and try to see other people and treat them as sacred also. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. also subscribed to that school of thought. He talked about an ideal of what he called the beloved community. So I feel like that's what we're supposed to be doing here. in ISKCON. We're supposed to be creating that beloved community. Doesn't that sound nice? You know, where you'd feel beloved and you treat other people as beloved, you know? Like at the Sunday program, you don't just sit and talk to your friends. You reach out to see if there's somebody, you know, maybe sitting by themselves in a corner, or maybe someone's feeling very sad, to reach out to them and find out, you know, why are you so sad and what can I do? So personally, I don't think that beloved community or radical personalism or living personalism I don't think it's really spelled out as scientifically or in detail as it is in Bhagavad Gita. For example, 5:18, the humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater. That means no casteism, right? That means the highest regard for every living being, no matter who they are, where they come from, what species, what gender, what country, what religion. This is radical. This is Krishna's radical personalism he's teaching us. What about Bhagavad Gita 6:32? He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings, both in their happiness and in their distress. Right? This is real personalism, you know? I feel pain, so I should notice when someone else is feeling pain. What can I do? What can I do to help, you know? So I want to share a couple, well, first let me give an example from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, since that's what we're reading today. Lord Chaitanya's radical personalism, right? So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had a son-in-law. So these are very high caste Brahmins, right? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was the personal court pundit of the king, and he was a very, very famous scholar of impersonal philosophy until he met Lord Chaitanya and became a great devotee and one of the dearmost devotees of Lord Chaitanya. But his son-in-law, Amoga, not to be confused with Amoga Lila Prabhu, right? So this Amoga, he was so envious of Lord Chaitanya. He was criticizing Lord Chaitanya non-stop, everywhere, just criticizing, right? And his great father-in-law, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he became so furious at his son-in-law that he was cursing him to die. And he sang about his own daughter, you know, how much a father loves his daughter. Look at Kanai Priya, how much he loves his two daughters, right? So he was cursing his daughter to become a widow. He says, let this Amoga die, let my daughter Sati become a widow. He was so furious. And so then what happened by destiny? Amoga contacted cholera, and he was suffering very much and dying. And Lord Chaitanya came to see him, and Lord Chaitanya was touching Amoga's heart. So beautiful, right? Lord Chaitanya is putting his hand on his Amoga's heart, and he said, Amoga, the heart of a Brahmin is a very pure place. How have you allowed envy to enter there? So Amoga repented. He began to feel remorse and contrition. And he was touched, literally touched by the hand of Lord Chaitanya, but touched by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and inspired great contrition in his heart. And that cholera left his body. And then Amoga was again and again slapping his face like, this mouth has offended Lord Chaitanya. I've offended Lord Chaitanya with this mouth, and he's slapping his face. So yeah, this is the radical personalism of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our Lord who we worship, right? So our worship should include following this example in our own small lives. Maybe we don't know anyone who has cholera, and maybe we don't have the potency to remove cholera from someone's body, but in some small way we can remove some pain or suffering by a kind word, a smile, a gesture, or, you know, maybe even giving blood sometimes, right? So I want to share a couple of stories of Srila Prabhupada's radical personalism. I know everyone likes stories of Srila Prabhupada. I'll tell a story, and then I'm going to ask you, what did you learn from this story? Okay? Okay. So at one time there was a Gurukula in the temple in Dallas, Texas. And at that time, the devotees were few and they had many responsibilities. And there was one lady, she was a teacher, a disciple of Prabhupada, and she was a teacher and she was teaching academics. Where is Amba? There she is, okay. So she was a teacher, teaching academics all day, but at night she was an ashram teacher. So she was so stressed out, she couldn't handle it, and she just felt like she was just braiding like hundreds of braids in the hair of these girls every day, and she was so stressed out. So Prabhupada came to that temple, and he was giving the Srimad Bhagavatam class, sitting on the Vyasasana in the morning. And while Srila Prabhupada was speaking, one little girl started to cry. And this little girl was under the care of this particular teacher, and she didn't know what to do, you know. So she took the girl, took her out, and went down the hall and put her in one of the classrooms and put her in the corner and said, "You just stay there and be quiet. Don't come out." And then she went back, like a very good devotee, went back into the Bhagavatam class and sat and listened to Prabhupada speak about what is Krishna consciousness. And what did Srila Prabhupada do? This is so amazing. So when Srila Prabhupada finished the lecture, he got down from the Vyasasana and he walked out of the temple room. He walked right down the hall into that classroom where that teacher had put the little girl in the corner. And Srila Prabhupada was walking up to the little girl, and she felt his presence, and she had fallen asleep, and she got up when she felt Prabhupada's presence, and she's going, "Oh, Prabhupada, Prabhupada." And Prabhupada just walked up to her, and he was talking to her, and he was stroking her head, and talking, and asking her if she was all right, comforting her. Who knows what that little girl must have been suffering, you know? Maybe she was missing her mother. Maybe she was hungry. Maybe she was tired. And Prabhupada felt her pain. So, you know, to me that story teaches, like, Srila Prabhupada gave a great lesson to that teacher that day, what it means to love and what it means to actually teach, right? So, any thoughts on that? Srila Prabhupada's sweetness, yes?
From this instance, I think we can see it is not just about saying you are not this body, you are soul. It's about taking care of body also, everything as a person.
Yes, taking care of the heart, the emotions, the everything. You know, not ignoring the body also. But yeah, any other thoughts? Yeah, yeah. So let me tell another story. I know it's getting late. I'm getting overtime, right? Am I all right on the time? Okay, so here's another story that I like so much. This is from the early days in New York, 26 2nd Avenue. So there was a new devotee. His name was Stephen Guarino. He became in the future Satsvarup Das Goswami. But at this point he was, he was not initiated yet. And they were having the first initiation. And he was invited to become initiated, but he was a very humble person by nature, so a very introvert, scholarly, literary person. And he just felt very unqualified, so he didn't go to that initiation. But he was doing typing for Prabhupada. He was typing up Prabhupada's manuscripts. So every week Prabhupada would come to his apartment and accept the typing that he had completed. So the night after the initiation, Prabhupada came to his apartment to pick up the typed manuscripts, and he handed the manuscripts to Prabhupada at the door, Swamiji at that time, and he was thinking, you know, I'll just do this mechanically. He was thinking he didn't need to give his heart. He was going to do this work, and in a sort of a mechanical way, right? So Prabhupada accepted the manuscript from him, and then just looked at him in the eyes and said, in such a tender way, Prabhupada said, "If you love me, I'll love you." Isn't that beautiful? So in conclusion, thinking of this idea of a lived personalism or a radical personalism, Srila Prabhupada taught that we should see anyone who walks into one of our temples as Krishna's special guest, to welcome them, but not to just treat them with kind of a one-upsmanship. Don't do this, don't do this, don't put your feet here, don't do this, you know. People get overwhelmed when we tell them so many rules like that, you know. So we need to welcome them as unique persons, as beloved parts of Krishna, and not receive them with ego or judgmentalism or this. What do I mean by one-upsmanship? I mean, you know, like I came to the temple last month and I know that you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, so I'm going to tell you. No, that's not the right mood, right? So, yeah. Srila Prabhupada wrote that Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is always inviting us, the fallen conditioned souls, to associate with him in pastimes of love. So, my question for myself and for all of us is, can we accept his invitation and extend that loving invitation to others as well? Yeah, so thank you all so very much. And do you have any reflections or thoughts? What was important for you? What was a takeaway for you? Or maybe any questions? Yes, Prabhu. Devotee has his hand up over there. Is there a microphone?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Dandavat Pranam. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
My question is that soul has any gender?
That's an interesting question.
Soul is a male, female, or transgender, or
That's
this
a-
or that?
That's a question not on the topic of today's class, but we should try to ask questions or reflections on the topic of the class. But yeah, according to our acharyas, the soul is actually a feminine gender. You know, so our acharyas have their Vrindavan forms as, you know, manjaris and assistants to Radha and Krishna. Some are cowherd boys, some are in a parental rasa, but generally the nature of the jiva is understood to be feminine.
Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. I was actually not present. I have playing cricket, but somehow I came and.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Jai Srila Prabhupada ji. Mataji, I got the understanding that instead of being mechanical in our behavior with others, we can be more personal and we can be more compassionate and caring towards all.
Yeah, thank you. You got the essence of the message, right?
Yes, Mataji.
Like, if you think about it, think of people in your own family, you know, can you treat them in a mechanical way?
No, Mataji, all are dear to Krishna and so we must treat them as they are our own.
Yeah.
And we should care for them.
And see everyone out in the streets of Delhi and everywhere else as Krishna's own beloved family.
Yes,
Right?
Mataji.
So thank you for realizing that. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. I'm going to take this question from this gentleman, and then I want to take some reflection from one of the Vaishnavis.
Yeah. Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Mataji, we have to extend our love and affection to others, but most of the time, what we feel that we should be loved. So that feeling becomes more prominent than extending love towards others. So how do we, curb that tendency and more of, try to give rather than receive?
Yeah. That's spiritual consciousness, isn't it? To give, to think of giving more than we receive. And the fact is that the more we give, this is part of the mystery of Krishna's wonderfulness, that when we give, we receive more than, the one who received. We get more, right? I was thinking today is Christmas Eve, and one of the wise things that was said by Jesus Christ, he said, "As you do unto the least of these, you do unto me." So we get more realization, more happiness by giving. And you can experience it, Like you can get a big box of Mahaprasadam from the temple here, right? And you can put it under your chadar. And you can just sneak home and eat the whole box yourself, and you get a big stomach ache. But instead, you can stand at the door of the temple and give a piece to every devotee, every guest, everyone who's going out in the street, and give it to everyone and say, "This is Krishna's Mahaprasadam." And what will you feel? You can do an experiment. You'll feel more happiness, right? So, to be an instrument of that kind of love. Be an instrument of that kind of love, and you'll get more than you. Try it. I think we should all try it. Try an experiment and see.
Thank you so much,
I hope
Mataji.
that's helpful. Because that's a very juvenile thinking, isn't it? When it's all about me. This is how I meant to mention a 2-year-old again. These are my toys, and nobody can play with my toys, and it's a very juvenile way of thinking. But when we grow up, we have to grow up to the adulthood of giving, and see what we get. So now, is there some reflection or question from one of the wise, silent Vaishnavis at the back? Does anybody remember what we talked about? Any reflection? It doesn't have to be a question, it could be a reflection. Or what was a takeaway? What are you going to tell someone else about what you heard today? Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. In that incident, when you said that the worker who was working in the Juhu temple, he was saying Allah, Allah. So what was Prabhupada's reaction? Did he was just a silent observer, or did he...
Prabhupada was moved by his mood of devotion, by the mood of devotion in a non-sectarian way. Prabhupada was his heart was touched by that man's mood of devotion. So we should also imbibe that and not be sectarian, And this, when you think about it, devotees like to talk a lot about varnashram, but this is really the essence of varnashram, that everyone should be honored for what they do, and they should do it in consciousness of God by any name. Such a beautiful thing. Prabhupada was so moved by his devotion. That was his consciousness.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to share one other thing. Prabhupada, it was a little story, Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, and all the devotees were coming up saying all these beautiful words to Prabhupada. Prabhupada, you are Jagat Guru, you are Savior of the whole world, and all these things. And someone was sitting like right at the foot of the Vyasasan and heard Srila Prabhupada saying very, very quietly under his breath after each devotee came up, Prabhupada was saying, "Now you become. You become. Whatever you're saying to me, you become that." Isn't that beautiful consciousness? So, thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
I had one question, Mataji. Like, we read Srila Prabhupada books, sometimes we hear conversation also, and sometimes Srila Prabhupada is very heavy and chastising devotees also, and sometimes we see some devotees also acting like in the same manner. So how to understand this point? At the same time, Prabhupada is heavy also, and at the same time his heart is very soft and like living personal. Personalism is there. So.
That's a great question, an important question. I think we as just followers of Srila Prabhupada, we tend to try to imitate Prabhupada in the wrong way, in the wrong ways. first let's try to imbibe his compassion, Sometimes Prabhupada would say, I can say these things, you cannot, Like, we're going to stand at some big pandal in Delhi and criticize Gandhi or Vivekananda. No, that's not going to work, So we have to first learn Prabhupada's mood of compassion, right? And not think that we're so great that we can be chastising people. Because, in fact, whoever I want to chastise is probably much better than I am, much more realized than I am, Prabhupada, could use righteous anger, right, like Hanuman. But that's a very, very dangerous fire to be touching, Actually, I'll tell you something really cute. Prabhupada, I think this is a Bengali saying. How does it go? Oh yeah. Big, big belly. Prabhupada used to say this sometimes under his breath when someone was doing something proud or bombastic or egoistic. You can hear Prabhupada on these lectures, conversations like you're saying. Prabhupada would say, this Bengali, okay, first I'll say the Bengali saying. It's about Hanuman, right? So it's in a little bit archaic English, but try to follow it. Big, big monkey, big, big belly. But Selan jumping, he tries to jump to Lanka, right? Selan jumping, he's melancholy. He can't do it, right? So Prabhupada would say this about his leaders when they were acting a bit proud. You hear him, big monkey. Big monkey, big belly. But he tries to do something great like Hanuman, he's melancholy. So, I think before we try to employ righteous anger like Hanuman and Srila Prabhupada, we should first understand his compassion. We're reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Chaitanya was also very harsh with Junior Haridas. But, I've understood from commentators that it was because some of the sannyasis at that time were becoming a little loose in their behavior. So Lord Chaitanya wanted to set an example of one of his dearmost devotees. So, we have to take things. Another important point is to take things in context. Not to take one statement out of context, and not imitate Prabhupada, and not take his. Sometimes his statements in his books come down on us like a ton of bricks, right? But we have to take those statements in the context of everything else he says, right? I hope that's helpful. So I think we're way over time. Please forgive me. I hope you're all not too hungry and starving. Hare Krishna. Thank you for inviting me here to ISKCON Dwarka. Haribo.
Grace Rukmini Mataji ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki.